Hi, I'm Rhonda Pick, Managing Editor of Pig Health Today. Joining me is Kristen Leuk, graduate student at the University of Illinois. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Biosecurity is always a top of mind concern these days. You've recently completed a research study looking at fogging methods and decontaminating supplies entering the sow farm. Tell us a little bit more about what you were looking at with your research.
Sure. So this summer, I participated in the Iowa State University Swine Veterinary Internship Program that had me looking at the location and fogger type on how well our supplies are being covered by disinfectants. So I used two different automated foggers, the Fogmaster Junior as well as the Hurricane Ultra 2 fogger, which is a pretty common fogger that we're seeing on in our decontamination rooms. And then we sprayed manual sprayer as well in order to apply the disinfectant in 4 different treatment groups. One was using just a single Fogmaster, the second was a single Hurricane fogger, and the third was 2 Hurricane foggers, and then finally a manual sprayer. So we applied intervention to those products and for a 10-minute contact time, and we evaluated the surface area coverage that each of those foggers was able to achieve on some boxes that we had that mimic some boxes of supplies entering a farm. So we saw that we had a pretty low coverage with our Fogmaster, and then we increased coverage with a Hurricane fogger as well as 2 Hurricane foggers, but we saw the best coverage with a manual sprayer. And so therefore our recommendation will be to manually spray supplies entering farms. And that's just due to the fact that in our fumigation rooms we use chemical disinfectants, and those rely on physical contact. So we really want to be covering our supplies thoroughly and at a 100% rate in order for the pathogens that may be found on our boxes or any of our supplies to be thoroughly decontaminated.
So what kind of range are we talking about as far as if you look at the different results? You said the manual performed the best, but give us a little breakdown on that.
Sure. So the Fogmaster, it got around a 25% coverage. So only the top of our boxes were covered with a little bit of disinfectant. We added dye to our disinfectant in order to visualize the coverage, and then we used a software program called ImageJ to evaluate the percent surface area coverage. And so the Fogmaster got around 25%, and then we increased to around 35% for a single Hurricane fogger, and then I increased again to around 55% for the 2 Hurricane foggers. And there are variations on room size and the locations of their foggers that may manipulate some of your results, but consistently the take-home message is that our automated foggers aren't getting as good coverage as we originally thought they were. We originally assumed that the foggers were applying mist to the room and it's permeating all surfaces of the room, reaching the bottoms and the backs and the sides of all of our supplies. But that concept has been somewhat disproven, and that was a really common topic in the student seminar sessions this time around. Particle size is different for each of the foggers. With the manual spray, we did get close to 95% coverage, and that just was the 5% coverage that we didn't achieve was because we didn't manipulate the boxes on the shelf while we were spraying them. The downfalls with manual spray are just going to be that it's going to be more time consuming. It does spray at a higher flow rate, and so you could be very wasteful with products. So it's going to be something that we need to work towards in the industry is creating some really good protocols for what we're going to be doing on our farms, as much as how long are we going to be spraying products, how well are we going to be covering products. Personal protective equipment will probably need to be provided, and so we'll need to do some further studies looking into things like that.
I know as part of your research you also had the opportunity to maybe provide some fresh eyes looking at fumigation rooms.
Sure,
and what are some key learnings that come out of your observations with interacting with that?
Sure, yeah. So the fumigation room is pretty common on all of our farms these days, and so we just got to observe a variety of fumigation rooms at a variety of farms this summer, and just some consistent things were just it's used really commonly, but we need to be making sure that you're having your disinfectant maintained in the reservoir and it's appropriately concentrated or diluted depending on the product that you're using. We need to make sure that our fumigation rooms are not too heavily stocked. So if you have your room packed and cluttered, or if you're not removing supplies at a timely manner, you can definitely see some issues with like a shadowing effect of where the spray is not reaching certain areas, as well as your supplies aren't being covered if it's in the box in the middle and it's surrounded by all these other different boxes of supplies. You don't want to really have that scenario, because then your supplies aren't going to be disinfected well. And then another big takeaway is that we really don't even want to be bringing things such as cardboard into the farms. Last year there was a really good project that showed that cardboard is a very complex substrate, and it's unable to be disinfected using our chemical disinfectants. As much as possible, we'd love for producers to be unpacking supplies from their exterior level of whatever cardboard packaging that it might come from, and putting those actual supplies directly on the shelf. There are some products that will give or take the ability to actually do that, but as much as we can, we'd love for that to be happening.
So as you reflect on your research experience, what, if anything, really surprised you from your findings?
So I think just how low the coverage that we were receiving was the scariest thing. We were getting around 25 to 35% coverage for the most common setup that we're seeing on our farms today, which is a single fogger placed in the corner of a room. Given that it could be any type of fogger, I tested 2 types of foggers, but there are a variety of products on the market as well. But just in general, the sizes of our rooms are large, and the ability of our foggers to adequately cover our materials is a lot lower than we had originally presumed. So it's kind of scary to know that we're really only reaching just a small layer on the top of our boxes, as well as maybe some of the sides that are just getting a little bit of physical contact with our disinfectants, which is an issue. So I think the how low the numbers we achieved of the surface area was the most shocking thing.
Okay. And what take-home message would you have for producers that are thinking about their current setup and findings that you've seen? What advice would you give to them?
Sure. So I think the best advice is consider your room setup. Make sure it's not cluttered. Make sure that you're bringing in supplies on a timely basis so that your supplies are being disinfected. Use a chemical disinfectant that has been shown to thoroughly disinfect products. Also, try and remove your outer packaging, as well as, if it's possible and if it's affordable, really look into manual spraying your products. There's a lot of diseases out there these days that could cause a lot of disease outbreaks, and you want to get 100% coverage if we're going to rely on chemical disinfectants. But there's a lot of other different types of disinfectant materials that are coming into play these days, such as UV radiation, temperature and time, and gas. So continue looking into things and what a combination of these with our chemical disinfectants can do for our biosecurity procedures.